Welcome to Book Buzz Reviews and Summaries. Book, The Last Lecture by Randy Pausch. A three-part journey through the book's core. Part 1, The Last Lecture. Imagine being told that you have only a short time left to live. Not months of uncertainty, but a clear medical verdict. Now imagine being asked to give a lecture called Really Achieving Your Childhood Dreams. This is not a metaphor. This is where the last lecture begins. Randy Pausch, a brilliant computer science professor at Carnegie Mellon University, steps onto the stage knowing he has terminal pancreatic cancer. He does not arrive with tears or bitterness. He arrives smiling. He arrives energized. He arrives with something far more powerful than fear: clarity. From the very first moments, Pausch disarms the audience. He jokes about his diagnosis. He does push-ups on stage to prove he's still alive, really alive. And with that single act, he sends an unforgettable message. This lecture is not about dying. It is about living. The real meaning of a last lecture. Universities sometimes ask professors to imagine what wisdom they would share if it were their final chance to speak. Most treat it as a thought experiment. Pausch doesn't get that luxury. His lecture is truly his last. But instead of focusing on loss, he focuses on legacy. Not fame, not accolades. Legacy as in, what ideas will survive you? What values will your children carry when you're gone? And here's the twist. This lecture is not primarily for the audience in the room. It's for his 3 young children, who are too young to remember him. This realization changes everything. Childhood dreams, not silly, not small. Pausch structures the lecture around his childhood dreams, and at first, they seem almost laughably simple. He wanted to experience zero gravity. He wanted to be an Imagineer at Disney. He wanted to play in the NFL. But what makes these dreams extraordinary is not whether he achieved them, it's how he pursued them. Some he accomplished, some he didn't. And yet, every dream, fulfilled or not, became a teacher. This is one of Pausch's most profound ideas. You don't necessarily achieve your dreams to get what you want. You achieve them to learn who you are. Brick walls are there for a reason. One of the most quoted moments in the lecture, and the book, comes when Pausch talks about brick walls. Life, he says, will place brick walls in front of you. They are not there to stop you. They are there to test you. Brick walls exist to show how badly you want something, keep out the people who don't want it enough. This idea alone reframes struggle. Obstacles are no longer evidence of failure. They are filters. They reveal character. Pausch doesn't romanticize hardship. He simply refuses to waste it. The power of mentors and head fakes. As Pausch reflects on his journey, he gives immense credit to teachers, coaches, and mentors who pushed him hard, sometimes painfully hard. Some were strict, some were unfair, some seemed cruel in the moment. But with time, he recognizes what they gave him was something deeper than skills. He calls it a head fake. In sports, a head fake looks like one move, but accomplishes another. Education, Pausch argues, works the same way. You think you're learning physics, programming, problem solving. But what you're really learning is how to work with others, how to persevere, how to take feedback without breaking. And suddenly, the purpose of education and life becomes much larger than any single achievement. Time, the one resource you cannot replenish. Though Pausch refuses to dwell on death, time quietly hums beneath every word. He speaks about wasting time on petty grudges, complaining instead of acting, postponing joy until someday. When your time is finite, and you know it, you stop negotiating with nonsense. This isn't morbid. It's liberating. Time is all you have, and you may find one day that you have less than you think. By the end of part 1, you realize something subtle but powerful has happened. Pausch hasn't preached. He hasn't begged for sympathy. He has simply shown what it looks like to live with intention, gratitude, and courage, right up to the edge of the unknown. This is not a story about cancer. This is not a story about goodbyes. It is a story about choosing optimism without denial, chasing dreams without entitlement, teaching others how to live by example. And this is only the beginning. Part 2, the last lecture. If part 1 was about discovering what truly matters, part 2 is about the harder question. How do you live once you know? Randy Pausch now moves from childhood dreams to character, from aspiration to execution. This is where the lecture deepens, where inspiration is no longer enough, because knowing what matters is easy. Living it every day is not. Integrity, doing the right thing when it's inconvenient. Pausch speaks candidly about honesty, not as a moral slogan, but as a practical survival skill. He insists, tell the truth even when it costs you. Apologize when you're wrong, and do it fully. Don't give partial truths that protect your ego. Why? Because trust compounds. Once lost, it rarely returns. Pausch explains that people who are consistently honest attract opportunities, not because they manipulate, but because others feel safe working with them. If you're honest and reliable, people will give you second chances. If you're not, they won't. This is not idealism. It is realism sharpened by experience. The art of working with others. One of Pausch's most practical lessons is about teamwork. He admits openly, he wasn't always easy to work with. Brilliant? Yes. Demanding? Absolutely. Perfect? Not even close. What changed him was feedback and his willingness to listen. At one point in his career, a senior colleague gives him a brutal performance review. Not gentle, not diplomatic, just honest. Pausch could have dismissed it. Instead, he chose humility. And that choice transformed him. He learns that being right is not the same as being effective. That brilliance without empathy isolates you. That respect is earned not just by competence, but by how you make others feel. When nobody is telling you what you're doing wrong, it doesn't mean you're perfect. It often means they've given up on you. Enabling the dreams of others. Here's where Pausch reveals one of his deepest beliefs. The best way to achieve your dreams is to help others achieve theirs. As a professor, he pours energy into his students, especially those with wild ideas and unconventional ambitions. He doesn't just teach them content. He builds environments where creativity thrives. One of his proudest achievements is not a research paper or award, but a course that allows students to imagine, build, fail, and try again. Through them, his influence multiplies. This is legacy in action. Discipline over motivation. Pausch does not believe in waiting for inspiration. He believes in showing up. He talks about preparing relentlessly, practicing beyond comfort, treating deadlines as sacred. Motivation fades. Discipline remains. This philosophy becomes even more powerful in the context of his illness. Despite exhaustion and pain, Pausch continues to teach, plan, and create, not because he feels like it, but because it aligns with who he chooses to be. Your best work often happens when you don't feel like working. Gratitude without naivety. Part 2 is also where Pausch's optimism becomes unmistakable, but it is not blind optimism. He acknowledges, life is unfair. Bad things happen to good people. Effort does not guarantee reward. And yet, he chooses gratitude anyway. He thanks mentors who were tough. He appreciates critics who challenged him. He even finds value in failures that close doors, because they redirected him to better paths. Gratitude, for Pausch, is not denial of pain. It is refusal to be defined by it, preparing the next generation. As the lecture unfolds, you begin to feel its emotional undercurrent more strongly. Pausch is no longer speaking as a professor or achiever. He is speaking as a father. Every principle he shares is something he hopes his children will one day hear and absorb. Be kind. Work hard. Be curious. Don't complain. Act. He cannot control how long he will be with them, but he can control what he leaves behind. And so, he teaches with urgency, not panic, but purpose. Why Part 2 changes you. By the end of Part 2, something shifts. This is no longer just an inspiring talk. It becomes a quiet mirror. You start asking yourself, am I easy to work with? Do I tell the truth when it's uncomfortable? Am I helping others succeed? Or competing for attention? Pausch doesn't demand answers. He simply lays out a life that works and lets you decide. In Part 3, everything converges. The dreams, the discipline, the love, and the limited time come together in a final message, one that is deeply emotional, profoundly human, and impossible to forget. If Part 2 taught you how to live, Part 3 will show you how to leave something that lasts. And once you reach that final chapter, you won't hear life the same way again. Part 3. With the last lecture, by the time Randy Pausch reaches the final movement of the last lecture, the room feels different. Not heavier, clearer. The jokes are still there. The warmth is still there. But now every word carries the quiet weight of knowing this is a man finishing well. This is not a farewell soaked in sorrow. It is a masterclass in how to leave without disappearing. The illusion of someday. Pausch returns to a theme that now feels unavoidable. Time. Most people live as though time is abundant. Pausch knows it isn't. And so he dismantles the comforting lie of someday. Someday, I'll spend more time with my family. Someday I'll chase what I really want. Someday I'll become the person I admire. For Pausch, someday is a dangerous word. It postpones courage. It delays love. It keeps life theoretical. If you have children, time is not a renewable resource. This isn't guilt, it's clarity. What truly endures? As his lecture nears its close, Pausch makes something unmistakably clear. Achievements fade. Awards gather dust. Titles dissolve. Even brilliant work is eventually replaced. What remains are people and how you shaped them. He asks the listener without accusation, did you encourage curiosity? Did you reward effort, not just talent? Did you leave people stronger than you found them? In these moments, Pausch's life narrows to its essence, not how much he produced, but how much he gave. Love as action, not sentiment. Pausch never indulges in emotional excess. Instead, he shows love through preparation. He records messages, organizes memories, builds frameworks his children can grow into. Love, in this context, is responsibility. It is foresight. It is refusing to let grief replace guidance. This is one of the lecture's most powerful lessons. The greatest expression of love is not what you feel, it's what you leave behind. Choosing joy anyway. One of the most astonishing aspects of the last lecture is Pausch's joy. Not forced cheerfulness. Not denial. Real joy. He laughs. He teases. He celebrates small wins. He delights in his wife, his children, his colleagues. He chooses joy, not because life is easy, but because it is meaningful. Showing up with enthusiasm is a gift you give others. And suddenly, joy becomes an ethical choice, the final message, without saying goodbye. As the lecture ends, Pausch does something remarkable. He doesn't say goodbye. Instead, he circles back to life, to dreams, to effort, to optimism grounded in reality. He leaves the audience and his children with a blueprint. Be curious, be disciplined, be kind, be grateful. Don't complain, act. And above all, live in a way that when people speak of you, they smile, and then try to be better themselves. Why this lecture never really ends. The last lecture lingers because it doesn't ask you to admire Randy Pausch. It asks you to notice your own life. It doesn't shout. It doesn't threaten. It simply asks, what would you say if this were your last chance? And more importantly, what are you doing today? When the applause fades, the message remains. Life is not about avoiding death. It is about earning the right to be remembered with love. And that is why the last lecture is not really about the end. It is about beginning. Thanks for listening to Book Buzz Reviews and Summaries.